you like to know where the best performing $1 million markets are?
We'll find out in today's episode of the Brisbane Property Podcast. There's 38 suburbs in Brisbane that have entered the $1 million club in the last 12 months. We're unpacking all of this and more in today's episode.
Welcome to the Brisbane Property Podcast with your hosts Melinda and Scott Jennison.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Brisbane Property Podcast with Scott and Melinda Jennison. And today, $1 million markets.
And there's a lot more of them than ever before here in Brisbane. We are going to be unpacking the $1 million markets report that was issued by Cotality, formerly CoreLogic, describing all of those markets that have joined the $1 million club. That is, the median value at a suburb level has now exceeded that $1 million price point. And one thing that I will say about Brisbane is that Brisbane, out of all capital cities throughout Australia, has had the most suburbs enter the $1 million market over the last 12 months compared to every other capital city market. So this is big news for Brisbane, and it just shows the strength that we've had in our market over the last 12 months.
I think it also shows a little bit more of the norm. The market, we've talked about it for quite a while now, about median prices, whether we're talking about units or houses, and how that's changed and how that's moved up. Obviously, the demand in Brisbane, and like we're seeing it on the ground at the moment, where we're seeing multiple offers and properties selling very, very fast. Let's say go to an auction campaign, and some selling prior to auction. But it's no surprise really that Brisbane is performing and moved right up the top of the ladder in that $1 million market.
Yeah. Look, just to help people understand, what do we mean by a new entrant or a suburb that's now entered the $1 million club? So basically, it is a suburb where the median value has risen above the $1 million price point over the 12 months up to the end of September 2025. But in the previous year, that's up to September 2024, the median value was less than the $1 million price point. So we've seen a shift from a sub $1 million price point to above a $1 million price point. And if that has actually happened in the last 12 months, those suburbs have been included. And we're going to run through all of those suburbs here in Brisbane so that you've got an understanding of the median values in each level right now.
And as Melinda mentioned earlier, Brisbane sitting up there, it saw the largest net change in $1 million markets with one new entrant and one re-entrant, I should say, and 37 new.
And what we mean by that is we had one suburb, that suburb was actually Chermside. It had dropped down out of the $1 million club throughout 2024, but it's re-entered the $1 million club throughout 2025. And sometimes that has happened across some suburbs across Australia. But here in Brisbane, 37 new entrants that were below the $1 million price point and now sit above that $1 million price point. Now compare Brisbane's new entrants or total entrants at 38 to Sydney. They had 36 suburbs that surpassed that $1 million price point over the last 12 months, and regional New South Wales had 32. Other suburbs were much, much lower in terms of that net overall escalation or value change into the $1 million club.
Yeah, and keep in mind, don't forget, over the past 5 years, Brisbane dwelling values have risen 80.1%.
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? Yeah, so we're only referring here to what's happened in the last 12 months, and that's the data that is being captured. But we've seen significant price growth across our city off the back of COVID and the pandemic and the fall in interest rates that's followed that. So, yeah, we're definitely seeing that strong upward pressure on prices continue right now.
So a few numbers, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of numbers coming up later on once we go through all this as well. So another thing, as of September, 56.6%, so that's 196 of house markets, and 5.8%, that's 9 of the unit markets, had a 7-figure median value in Brisbane, and now account for 12.4% of all $1 million markets nationally.
So they're big numbers when you think about it. So more than half of Brisbane suburbs are now in the $1 million price point, or at least a $1 million median. So when we talk about affordability, we used to think that, owning an asset that's worth over $1 million was very aspirational, to be a millionaire. Obviously, as kids growing up, that was a huge number. Now it's more than 56% of suburbs, and the housing in those suburbs require a budget of more than $1 million just to enter the market. So these are really strong recent growth levels, and we need to be mindful of that, especially if you're looking to enter the market. For a lot of people that have owned property here in Brisbane for some time, they may not even be aware of just how much equity they will hold in the asset that they own. Homeowners probably are completely unaware of the value that sits in the equity component of their property, and certainly investors, if they're not actively managing their portfolio, they may be completely unaware of the equity position that sits in their portfolio. So we strongly encourage people to get an understanding of the value of the home and subtract any debt position to really get a good understanding of their equity position, because of course you can use that equity to continue to invest in more property or in other asset classes.
I mean, it is the new norm, and I think that's a really good point that you've made there about people not understanding. It wasn't that long ago. We're 200 episodes. How many are we? 280 odd? 90 episodes? I don't know now.
I think I've forgotten it.
So many, it feels like. But it doesn't feel like it's that long ago when we were talking about houses for $400,000 or $500,000. And now the norm is that $1 million mark. So as you've just mentioned, Melinda, like if people are actually smart and keep an eye on their portfolio, you've probably got a lot of equity there. Okay, and that is a really good opportunity if that's what you desire, to get into the market and continue your portfolio and to benefit from what you've actually done in the past, which is great news. It's a good opportunity to reevaluate things, see where you sit and see what opportunities might be out there.
And look, right now in Brisbane, a seven-figure median value is the new norm, when 56% of suburbs now are in excess of that $1 million price point. The $1 million club, as it used to be, is much less exclusive than it historically once was. However, let's not forget the conversation around affordability. We must remember that, some of these areas may be starting to feel stretched in terms of affordability, and buyers must get an understanding of, where those incomes can still support those higher property values and perhaps where they can't, especially if those local markets have been propped up more recently by investors who are not locals in the area that have been purchasing in to those locations and driving up value. It's really important from a risk mitigation perspective to ensure that the local buyers in that area, the home buyers, can also afford to pay the same prices for properties, because if they can't, they're areas or locations that would appear to be at risk in the event of any economic downturn.
Now, it'll obviously have an impact then when we're talking about people's income as well. So obviously when you've got a certain income to be able to pay that, and now that we've gone up to that $1 million mark, obviously that is going to have a big impact on households when it talks about the income ratio side of things as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the average income, let's assume that it's around $106,000. That's the Australian average. With a 20% deposit, a household would need to dedicate about 51.6% of their pre-tax earnings towards servicing a loan on a $1 million property. So these are big numbers. Now, for any first home buyers perhaps that have been relying on the first home guarantee scheme, and therefore the deposit is just 5%, they would need to apportion 61.1% of their pre-tax earnings towards paying for a loan or servicing a loan. These are big numbers. Now, obviously, the first home buyers here in Brisbane can only actually purchase up to a threshold of $1 million to qualify. However, it's important just to understand how all of these metrics are interrelated, because for people that are purchasing property, it's good to get an understanding of some of those drivers that are influencing demand in different price points.
So as we mentioned at the start, $1 Million Club, so $1 Million markets, I guess, over the year of September. Brisbane obviously was the largest with 38 markets, as you mentioned. 37 new entrants, 1 re-entrant, which I believe was Chermside by memory.
Yep.
And that's obviously then joining that clubs, which brought a total count to 205.
205 suburbs that were analysed in total, but Brisbane accounts for 12.4% of all $1 million club members, if you like, or suburbs that have breached that $1 million price point nationally. So it's still a small portion nationally, but in the last 12 months, we've seen a big proportion of Brisbane prices enter that price point. I will say, though, Brisbane, you may have recalled earlier in the year, our median value for houses actually surpassed the $1 million price point back in March. In March 2024, you may recall from our podcast, the median value was just over that $1 million price point for the first time in history. Now, at the end of September, which is the latest data that we have available, and again, we're quoting Cotality data here, the median house price across all of Greater Brisbane is $1,062,000. So that median value has continued to escalate throughout the months since Brisbane as a whole entered the $1 million median price point. So, these are really strong growth projections or rather results. The projections are what is likely to happen from this point forward. But based on current supply and demand metrics, we really don't see many of those suburbs slowing down in terms of their rate of growth. And it's certainly not what we're seeing on the ground either.
We'll jump into a little bit more suburb level and break it down a little bit. But as a little bit of a summary to that too for our listeners, at a suburb level, 56.6%, that's 196 of the 346 suburbs analysed across Brisbane had a median house value at or above $1 million in September, up 32, which was the 164 seen this time last year.
So basically there were 164 suburbs above the $1 million price point last year. And now there's actually 196. So, really strong numbers for Brisbane in terms of the number of suburbs. I keep getting my tongue tied today. The number of suburbs that have surpassed that $1 million price point. Let's actually also have a look at the unit market. So obviously, we've been talking about on this podcast the fact that the unit market has been outperforming the house market for the last couple of years, both monthly, quarterly, and also annually. Compared to houses, just 9 of Brisbane's 156 unit suburbs actually recorded a 7-figure price tag in September. So that's only 8.1% of unit markets have surpassed that $1 million median value. So it's quite different in the unit market. It's a much more affordable segment of the market. And we talk about this when we're breaking down dwelling values, knowing that most of the units do sit in the more affordable end of the market.
We've had some big sales. So slightly off the $1 million mark, I would probably say that as well.
$1 million.
So some examples of some top sales on the year to date. So Brisbane, we saw 32 Sutherland Avenue in Ascot sold in July 2025 for a little $23 million.
And these are just to give you an idea of the very top end of the market and what some of the prestige properties here in Brisbane have achieved over the last 12 months. We've also got a unit example at unit 1821 of 22 Refinery Parade New Farm, and that was a top sale over the last 12 months, achieving $17.5 million, and that sale was recorded in June 2025. So it just gives you a snapshot view of what the top end of both the house market and the unit market can achieve, and certainly have achieved in the last 12 months for those premium end products.
We've been to a few auctions as well, some in-room auctions recently, and we saw some good sales. There's actually a few prestige properties going this weekend as well, up for auction as well. So we'll keep an eye on that for you. As people know, we get out and about on the weekends. If we are not working for a client, we are going to the market. We're going to see what's happening. We're going to auctions and we're gauging what's actually happening out there in real time. So we'll keep an eye on that this weekend in that prestige market as well to see what happens at those auctions.
So what we want to do now is run through the top suburbs that have now entered the $1 million price point. We're going to help you understand whether they're units or houses that have entered the $1 million club, which region of Brisbane these suburbs are located in, and the current median value as at September this year. And also the growth rate that we've experienced in these suburbs over the last 12 months. So the first suburb on the list is Capalaba.
So Capalaba is in Brisbane's east. Houses there, and the current median value is $1,011,396. So that's an increase in a 12-month change of 13.2%.
Next on the list is Hemmant, again in Brisbane's eastern suburbs. Again, houses have entered the $1 million price point with a median of $1,078,706. And the 12-month price change in Hemmant has been 10.1%.
Redland Bay houses, again, Brisbane East houses, there's pretty common there for a few here in a row, actually. So Redland Bay, 1,086,847 and 11.5% change.
So the next on the list is Tingalpa, again in the Brisbane eastern suburbs. Houses there are now at a median value of $1,097,245, and the 12-month change in median values was 12.6%.
Wynnum West, again, Brisbane East house, 11.8% change, 1,096,691.
And Victoria Point in Brisbane East houses are now 1,092,436 with a 9.3% annual change.
Then we jump out to Boondall on the north side. So Boondall, $1,027,985, 12.3% change in that annual.
Yeah, and what's interesting there is that this is one of the only suburbs in Brisbane that's not currently at its peak. Peak median values in Boondall were actually achieved in August. So there was a slight decline in median values at a suburb level for that particular location between August and September. Although it's really important to note that that may be off a very low sales volume because when you're looking at median value changes at a suburb level month to month, it can be somewhat inaccurate.
We'll jump through a few here fairly quickly if you like, because otherwise we do have a lot of numbers here. So at 5.9%, Tagum, Algester, 8.5%.
This is the annual growth rate.
Annual growth. The next one is actually a unit. So it's the first one of the units that we've got, and that's at Carindale. Carindale is on the Brisbane South, 10.7%. And that's $1,011,508
as a median value. Obviously, there are a lot of numbers here. Also in Brisbane South, we've got Pollara. That area or suburb increased 9.2% in median value over the last 12 months. Again, it's $1 million suburb now. Rochdale, 6.8% median value, just above $1,032,000. And Runcorn in Brisbane's south, houses there $1,055,000 with 7.7% annual growth.
Capera, this is the first one on the Brisbane West. So Capera houses 11.3%. That's 1,079,125. Not far from Capera, you've got the Gap. The Gap units, this one is. So it's the first lot of units that's gone over there in Capera. To 1,047,000. The Gap, I should say, 1,047,977, 10.7%.
It's really interesting. I mean, anyone that's taking notes or running this through ChatGPT to extract the actual data, you'll see some of the areas that have outperformed others in terms of that suburb price change over the last 12 months. But I will emphasize once again that when you're looking at suburb level data, there can be a little bit of a jump around in median values based on what is actually selling. And it's really important to understand that, especially in relation to property data. Looking at inner city now, we've got Balmoral units just surpassed the $1 million price point, and there was an 11.3% increase in median values for units in Balmoral. Barton in the inner city as well, units also now surpassed the $1 million price point with 11.6% annual change. And South Brisbane, another inner city location, houses there have only just surpassed the $1 million price point with a median of $1,012,000. And the annual growth for houses in South Brisbane was 12.6%.
The next lot we've got based actually out in the Ipswich area. Mm-hmm. So there's 4 in Ipswich. You've got Augustine Heights, Barralin Point in Corona Downs and Oxley. So you've got a range there, and these are all houses, and we range down from about 8.3%, 8%, 8%, and 6.3%.
So you can see that the growth in these locations has been a little bit less at a median value level than some of the inner city locations, which is an interesting observation as we move into the Ipswich region. Now looking at Logan and Beaudesert regions, we've got Cedar Vale with annual growth at 12.1%, $1 million price point for houses. Greenbank houses, an increase over the last 12 months of 8.9%. Jimboomba, an increase of 11.9%. Rochdale South, we've got houses, an increase of 8%. Woodhill, houses increased 13.2%. And that pretty much wraps up the Logan and Beaudesert region.
And then we jump up to the north. We're up in the Moreton Bay area. So you've got Moreton Bay North, Moreton Bay South. So Moreton Bay North, you've got Burpengary East, Scarborough, Woody Point, and Wirram.
Over near Bribie Island.
Yep. So again, they're a little bit lower on Burpengary East. So 4.9%, Scarborough 12.8%, Woody Point 13.3%, and Wirram 8.1%.
Now, the Moreton Bay South, a lot of people know this as the end of the train line. Ferny Hills houses, again, over the $1 million price point, median at $1,104,000, 11.3% annual change in that particular market. We've got Joiner. Again, it's a southern part of Moreton Bay. Houses grew 7.5%. Again, $1 million median now. Mango Hill, 8.9% 12-month change. Marumba Downs, 8.5% 12-month change. And finally, Warner, 13.7% annual change. And that wraps up all of the new entrants, all 37 of them that came into the $1 million price point here in Brisbane in terms of median value. And of course, we've mentioned previously Chermside being the only suburb that fell out of the $1 million club, if you like, last year. It's re-entered this year. Houses in Chermside, 1,152,464 with 18.7% annual price growth in Chermside in the last 12 months.
That's a good recovery.
Huge recovery. Yeah.
So it's interesting when we talk about that $1 million mark, and we do talk about this to people when they inquire to us at Streamline Property Buyers about, you know, the normal or what you actually buy, what you get these days for your dollar. So it's good to understand that now for people to say, you know, that 500, 600, 700 mark, we're really moving up. We've seen a lot of competition in that sub $1 million mark here in Brisbane. Obviously, when the first home buyer scheme came into play as well in October, we saw a lot of people come into that market. It's a very, very competitive part of the market. So obviously that $1 million mark is pretty much the norm now, I think, and it will continue to move upwards, I think.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for people to understand, depending on the budget that you may be using for a purchase, 56% of Brisbane suburbs, if you're looking for a house, are now have a median value above that $1 million price point. That's critical to understand. If you're shopping below a $1 million budget, you're shopping a much smaller portion of the market, and you're certainly not shopping an inner city or middle ring suburb market. You're much further out in terms of greater Brisbane locations, not those locations further in.
Caught up with a couple of agents on the weekend, and they love listening to our podcast. So big shout out there. It's nice that even the agents like listening to us on the Brisbane Property Podcast. Little weather update for people down south. Gee, it was hot here yesterday. We had a hot couple of days here in Brisbane. We hit the 38 mark. And then we were lucky enough to get a bit of cool change and a bit of rain. So that's your weather update for Brisbane as well.
Needed rain. Everything was becoming quite dry and crispy. Summer hit really quite early this year. So I think we're in for a long, hot summer.
Definitely. Well, that's the $1 million market update from the Brisbane Property Podcast. As I do each week, I let Melinda wrap things up and say goodbye, and I will talk to you again next week. So from me, take care. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll talk again next week. Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Thank you once again for joining us on the Brisbane Property Podcast. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. And if you have, we would love for you to share with friends and family. The more people that know about our podcast, the more we're going to get your support to continue to put effort into creating these episodes together. Until next week, we hope you have a wonderful week, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon. Bye for now.